Hello. James Madison declassified about why and how. None of the founders and himself, he's the only founder we know the name of. They did not have free speech. Hold on. Excuse me? Oh. So they did not have free speech. And that's principle. So James Madison is the only founder that we know the name of. And why and how is because it was a breaching method entrenched. There were more than 13 colonies entrenched, and everyone was rules, even with slavery. All kinds of crazy laws that were equivalent value simultaneously as a torture, extortion, slavery method, an identity theft, fraud, slander method. But there also one thing they were all together is a human fact, human nature breaching method. This reassigned Black people's rights of eyes communications projected to us by nature itself and made self-body roles and only allowed anyone with other to be sensed, including if that body was a majority of people. Their syntax would be sensed and it would be adapted to. And this had been at the countries that were involved with that. And our founders left declassified for us why and how not to use their syntax, leaving out how and why no one had free speech and everyone had to pretend to others simultaneously to an extent or to be sensed. Why and how not to let people pretend that their arguments are honest when they're speaking about policy. But that's our subject, foreign policy. The Constitution unabridged is a policy. So you guys are defending your arguments using principled treatments with campuses that are still involved with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought, and exploited that way, pretending other as a certain type of victim / hyper victim. But if someone tries to address it syntactically at any age of fact-shaping nature, there are connections between multi-front, how little kids, middle age, and elderly have a breaching method, have had roles. So a whole bunch of breaching methods, roles, needs, nature, styles, totally different people. You guys have, when you guys are defending your logic, your nature of logic, your fact-shaping nature, qualities, aspects, premises, sequence treatments, nature treatments. It is as criminal insidious natures of positive and negative treatments, incapable of affording to discern what nature shows us between how there's a difference between positive things like peace as criminal insidiousness natures of peace. There's a difference between facts and truth used for lies or used to screen lies. This is one of the reasons fake news is being used by the president / chief as a phrase, because even though I don't know him, I've never spoken with him about it. Every individual is prevented a quality of fact-shaping nature at each age of fact-shaping nature. We have an identity theft, fraud, slander method against ourselves. Everyone's a certain type of victim / cyber victim. President Trump too, when he values the IQ test, he could not fathom, like you guys couldn't, what's actually recorded because of how they've been putting fake transcripts in databases and doing it through others. So it's the differences of guilt of people at the campuses, next to the campuses, next to it just temporary. Like WTNH has been planting evidences they planted evidences at corners of the street on Highcrest Street with people involved with whiting forensics and multiple police departments with sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with the interbranch. This is evidence because they have time collusions with Russians and Ukraine, people from Korea, people from Italy, foreign and domestic military, the Eastern States Narcotics Drugs Taskforce. I forced them to respond. I don't know why they put a drug task force. I know it has something to do with the interbranch. They have been planting names on all sides of my house and trying to put fake ties to me with people they have roles with drug crimes with and wire crime acts and methods with. Like a Robert Rodriguez tried to make, I didn't respond to him. Both times he was on my street, tried to time where I was going to be there and walk by. The people that from other areas, the time when I was going to be there, to try to put fake ties to me since I was a kid. So I recognize that. I had been in an apartment, so I had moved back to my house. They've been doing this increasingly. People with the name Collusion and DeMoro, Wethersfield Police, and others at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, and at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. There's a Joshua Stryker too. I never had a word of conversation with him. Eric Oliveri sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm he has him involved with UPS, intelligence, and foreign and domestic, involved with his educators, as one's involved with further child abuses. And child abusers lead the kids years apart with the families that force that. He has rules with identity theft, fraud, slanders with people. As one of the names I even know the name, but I don't even know all their names. And years apart, but he's one of the ones that have been planting evidence on my street, using all truths for lies too, and pretending behind my back to people that would speak with my family and stuff like that I know them. Dishonestly, it has something to do with their roles with the state judicial branch offices of Connecticut, also with a Wethersfield Pizza House near them, with a Stephen Stocko and his educators at Central Connecticut State University and at Wethersfield campuses. They have sexual and medical offenders of kids roles through other natures of organized crime acts and roles they have. Wire crimes to the Wethersfield police, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with a Stephen Stocko. And they're forging names and switching names with the FBI Director Robert Lusk and his co-defendants and their family members. Too, Stephen Stocko has people tied to him that recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm he's involved also with the judicial branch offices on off Town Line Drive. But I mean, with people, I mean, on off Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that, like Two Rod Hwy and Hangdog Lane. A bunch of people involved with Stephen Stocko, also with wire crimes on my street, with multiple police departments with the same house/S, and one's interstates about where they are now, too. I don't even know. They had a collusion/S with this. And then when they're reportedly not living there. They were planting evidences for sequence ships. Has something to do with their corners of Highcrest Street. They've been planting evidences and identity theft, fraud, slanders. And as ones involved with their syntax with names at Central Connecticut State University. And they'll tell you this, but you have to ask them. You know, I minded my business. There are connections between people with WFSB's World Trade Center predicate acts. They put me in fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center act. They attached me and other kids. They pretended that when I was a kid, I had conversations with a doctor and ties to a doctor that weren't at all. They pretended my mother said that. In other words, they faked speaking with a doctor to my parents. And they made and with a Leahy family is one of the names involved. They have their kids through time, and now those people are adults and they have their kids, putting fake things in databases, having people pretend passions and emotions at other locations. They have roles with drugs and medicines, crimes and investigators of all natures. People with the Department of Children and Families investigators. And the people that were investigating. Central Connecticut State University has a Ray Hernandez, and people involved with Joseph Lieberman. That's in New Britain, Connecticut. Involved also on Town Line Drive, and conjunctions to it. Increasingly, people named DeMoro involved with Saudi attackers. People involved with Saudi Arabia have forced collusions with some Mendez police, and people named DeMoro. And they said they demonstrated non-verbally has something to do with the side entrance to Town Line Drive Shopping Center before and after the World Trade Center attack they did. Jonathan Maiano also has collusions with syntax and reports of someone who was killed there. I don't know. I never had a word of conversation, never had a doc. I never met him. He reportedly he was killed on a motorcycle. And they have syntax where they have him involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with a Jonathan Maiano, who's increasingly involved with a Vanessa and others involved with deans. Like there's a Dean Key. They are the only people who are speaking for Palestine, who are collusion/S with the people inter and intracultural, stealing our own human culture. The only voices allowed to speak for humanity have principled treatments that they can't defend that and have discerned, have valued properly the principles of James Madison of unabridged. Getting the Constitution unabridged is a policy. You guys not faking, changing, and hiding what I said about the child abuse acts, elderly abuse acts at the same time, the same ones. And also the differences of guilt of names at or next to the campuses or people just traveling by. And part of it is their collusions, just repeating fake things and pretending that's an investigation. The investigators are throwing up fake things for themselves. Then they have to hide that in the future because there are the worst use/S and facilitations of overt criminal enterprises, private ones. That's why they're timed collusions with the names at next to the houses and businesses at next to Hartford Hospital. And those same names timed collusions there or just going by. In other words, there are journalists tied to Jack Heitner and others with the departments of the campuses that are used individually, grouped together, criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought. Syntax and syntax nature. Before and after the World Trade Center attack, Central Connecticut State University had and has collusion/S. Intercities and intra-cities. People next to where the Wethersfield Police Department is now are increasingly involved. Intercities and intra-cities and intercampuses and intra-campuses. Collusion/S with a whole bunch of different countries. A whole bunch of jumping in, the timing of their subject treatments and the questions to be, even when they put truths, they do little tricks beforehand. And I noted too, there's people conscious of the kids are going to be tested, and they know other kids don't know about the test coming up and things like that. And then they knew that from off the campuses, these things were influenced. And they knew that people would be able to go back and discern these things. This breaching method consciously it knew that also they would have a whole bunch of hyper-additional collusions. Self-value, right, where it's not collusion. People say to themselves, it's not collusion, because they're just repeating what others say. That's why there's mandated law. You guys are supposed to get the interbranch on paper, one name and sequence. They've been using instances to hide what they did with the databases since we were kids. The courts and their family, a bunch of probate court judges and superior court judges and a Connecticut district court judge has roles with Brian Silver, per others with the corners of the streets on Highcrest Street, involved with them with a Leahy family, with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people with unions, for example, where they have the right to lie and their readings of statutes and precedents relevant, being and having been used remotely. There are defenses of it pretending not to be, but criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought. Self-value rules screening what no one wants collusions with even now at the same time, but breaching method keeps exceptions for them. It showed everyone to defend their jobs and titles, the worth of it, per relative readings of statutes and precedents of Wethersfield police lawyers associated with Russians, like a Peruta family, that another Russian at Hartford Hospital demonstrated involved with them, and Inspector Mike. I don't know who it is yet. He's increasingly involved with fire departments, putting records, and then leaving out and faking and hiding what's actually recorded, the value of their timed instances, involvements. Multiple fire departments and the differences of guilt at or next to those campuses. And their families run into Hartford Hospital to hide life progressions as patients. Their patients at Hartford Hospital have a whole bunch of direct and indirect involvements with the same house/S, further involved with the interbranch confessions over the phone, but also faked phone transcripts and changed, and digital, because they already faked the conversation with me at the police station as a kid. That weren't at all. And now as an adult too. They have some Mendez police brothers involved next to Fox Connecticut News and at it, involved with uses of the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano before and after he was with Fox News, preventing me a response. They stole my identity as collusions with WFSB, faked conversations with me, and about the World Trade Center attack. And while I caught them doing that to force child abuser leaders of kids, also sexual and medical. All this is recorded. They're pretending others recorded into databases. So if they want to deny it, get them on the heck on paper anyway, though. How are you? Cha. I don't speak, I only speak English, but better guys. So I was in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. And I recorded, as others did, and tried to communicate that a whole bunch of people tied to and as former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, and co-defendants of his and their family members and their sources, they have and have had collusion/S with all sides of criminal and civil cases interstates. In intercities, collusion/S with all natures of crime scenes and on campuses. As ones also in that court, and the court itself was proven after the attack. Right before the attack, the panel of judges had been shown legal papers that someone from inside the court changed the time stamping on the legal papers to make it appear as if they were handed in late to the court. And then that was proven. And then that led up to a 2006 district court case in Connecticut, which has a Thaddeus Grabowski and people at and next to Fox Connecticut News as one of the co-defendants of former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, also involved with John LeConte and with even if he's not still alive, I don't know, John LeConte and Dominic Leperata have collusion/S with their family members, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, also on off campuses, and as times collusion/S with relative recorded criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents that give people the right to lie, for example, about other people that are going against them for a union position. They use those rights to lie where they don't, and then they have to hide that increasingly as a breaching method they shows them, and then they're locked. And they, in other words, before they realize, but they realize to an extent. Like, for example, they have collusions with people off Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, also with their rules with military and their rules with Georgia and Russia, not Georgia, the state, and their rules with their syntax regarding their measuring and who's going to do that. And they have psychiatry involved with the delusions relative to the names of the people, the sciences. Like Colonel McGregor is an intelligence person, but the Eastern States Narcotics Drugs Taskforce, 2 times Hartford Hospital, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed them involved. Also, with the time before that, where I forced them to call the police without telling anyone to call it why, and no one would do it. So I said, I'm going to be very violent and say bad things until you do it. I'm going to be loud too, to make everyone do it. In other words, my past neighbors were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to collusions with organized crimes at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, with people from Central Connecticut State University and the intelligence next to them. Like a whole bunch of people tied to us, Bejario, are increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and falsified police reports and confessions of their roles with people with the state corrections offices, judicial branch offices, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, federal evidence crimes against little kids, as equivalent as drugs and medicines crimes too, with the names involved. And they're involved with child abusers, leaders of kids years apart. I never saw somebody Bajero on a campus before. He's increasingly one of the names involved with intelligence families near me, as a whole bunch of people from other areas, from different times who sought me out to make confessions and demonstrations. We're influenced to. And there's about a Joshua Stryker and his roles with people with corners of streets near me. That this breaching method has manifest. It's nature's demonstrating to, and has been demonstrating to humanity, there's a human fact cheaping nature breaching method still entrenched. And having been entrenched with American history, but we have that replaced from the logic of the only voices we're allowed to hear. They stand to break. So please have them fix the fake World Trade Center attack information. That was after the World Trade Center attack, which was a confirmation of WFSB is recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirmed the intelligence next to their location /S also has victims advocates involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and 4 sexual and medical offenders of kids years apart, and their roles pretending other. Oh, but we were just trying to defend the victims. Get them heck on paper in the Britain Superior Court, in the Hartford courts, and the district court. Before the World Trade Center attack, Eric Burgess made confessions and requests to help from me regarding their corruption, inter and intra-cities. These are also people, in other words. They know this. Then they try to keep going. No, they want to speak about statutes of limitations. They've been stacking the predicate acts with facts, fake things in their databases as collusion /S, hiding way worse about. Not one involved. So they have delusions too that I can show you this. Ancient snow people I'm going to use to show you this. You guys have finite, grouped, and active nature delusions and progressive ones until we have reason spoken for properly. There are too many natures of organized crimes with the fake syntax and the fake integrity of titles and of the names of the people, the scientists, to use a phrase from the Old Testament. Right where it says, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the scientists will come together and the part that comes before it. Doesn't say you are forced to respect other people who believe that religion's about some kind of principle with syntax regarding someone's sacrifice on a cross, etc. It says only defend right here with the names of the people, the scientists. The government's supposed to not get involved with religion. They're supposed to not have collusions against people. Oh, because they're prejudiced against another religion. They said their syntax. They're dishonest regarding their subject treatments. We're going to examine how the interbranch had and has collusion /S and the difference of their guilt or the intelligence tied to them, and all of them have a whole bunch of countries shared with them. It looked like an Italian woman in the hallway, or in their little office off the hallway of the Britain Superior Court, who's involved with people with the hallway of the Britain Superior Court, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, with some Mendez police, and people involved with the moral associated with them, also with falsified police reports, sexual and medical offenders of kids, and confessions about a rape, even if that was affected. In other words, and one of the girls said that a Joe DeMoro it was adults, men and women, involved with abuses of a Heather Hansen, even if she was directed to say that to my father, that she was raped by Joe DeMoro. John DeMoro and others brought in other girls, and with their confessions with this. These are also the people involved with syntax with a Michael Emmett, involved with the Board of Education, and names next to it involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. He also has sexual and medical offenders of kids with collusions with New Britain Superior Court people on the Facebook pages of the campuses too. Changing and faking digital evidence is also with Whiting Forensics. Identity thefts and frauds with a bunch of people tied to the same house /S with multiple police departments, the FBI, his co-defendants, their family members, and their educators, involved with lies to my educators behind my back too. In other words, please get them on paper, one name in sequence. Wethersfield campuses recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to me the way they did right. People from off the campuses forced, tricked, and persuaded. Collusions with people who told on me behind my back dishonestly to cover up their collusions and roles with use /S worst of the worst, some of the abuses of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people increasingly tied to body dumping spots, murders, and untimely deaths years apart that got brought up a number of times at the same time intercities and intra-cities with the same people that brought up the principal child abusers campus and their roles with an untimely death at Trinity College, and with digital and mail crime methods and a fake letter there. And there's a officer using the name Darth Vader over the phone at Trinity College. Little clowns. They get them on paper, one name in sequence. There are proofs that Puff Daddy has roles with unmarked intelligence and with Forrest Whitaker too. And Quinnipiac University has a bunch of people involved with a Fred Grisey and a Kevin Harris involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids at Hartford Hospital next to them, and next to Trinity College, and next to Central Connecticut State University, involved with the military World Trade Center predicate acts, also with the news with these other countries. So we have means over here to discern what's the problem with the world, because they're shared here and they're fake and as collusion /s. See, all those collusions are styles that hiding the roles with the singular, hypersingular collusion that came from the four modern religious messengers that knew that nature was continually demonstrated to everyone. A human fact achieving nature breaching method is one of the things commonly that all the different impositions upon ourselves is value. They are all value as that. They're all relative /hyper relativity to that. Thank you, people.